On today's podcast, we sit down with renowned manager Ruchir Mohan, partner at 1916 Enterprises, who's been at the forefront of developing top songwriters and producers shaping the sound of generations. We discuss the evolution of artist management from gatekeeper to creative partner, the real value of publishing in an era of institutional money, and the biggest lessons every creator needs to know to protect and leverage their work. Plus, insider insights into the huge catalog deal for producer Yung Lan, building a creative legacy and surviving the ups and downs of the music industry. This is one episode you can't afford to miss. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're excited to welcome manager and partner at 1916 Enterprises, Ruchir Mohan. We dive deep into the evolving role of management in today's music industry, from gatekeeper to creative partner and business strategist. Ruchir shares his journey from young DJ and producer to mentor, his passion for developing talent and building artist legacies, and the qualities he looks for when taking on new clients. We also discuss the real value of music publishing, the impact of private equity and institutional money on music rights, and how managers today are navigating the financial, creative, and personal stakes of their clients' careers. Plus, Ruchir reveals the one lesson he wants every emerging creator to know about protecting and leveraging their work, and shares his favorite inspirations, books, and documentaries that have shaped his path. If you're interested in the art and business of managing songwriters, producers, or artists, or just want to hear from one of the industry's rising strategists on building a lasting creative legacy, you do not want to miss this episode. Stay tuned. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey Insiders, ready to crush it in the music world? Whether you're an artist, band, or future music biz pro, MUBUTV's personalized coaching is your secret weapon.
We'll work with you side by side, sharpening your songs, building your brand story, locking in your ideal audience, and powering up your social media game.
Starting fresh or ready for the next level, we cover everything. Live shows, marketing hacks, branding, all tailored just for you.
Flexible coaching packages let you decide what fits your time and budget. Single sessions or discounted bundles that make investing easy.
Imagine the boost after just one session. Clearer goals, smarter strategies, and unstoppable confidence. Get started with a free 15-minute discovery call at book.mubutv.com. That's book.mubutv.com. Let's make your music career unstoppable. Hey Insiders, are you ready to take serious control of your music career? Whether you're dreaming of getting signed, finding the perfect artist manager, or landing your music in movies and TV shows, MUBUTV has you covered with 3 essential free guides.
First, learn how to contact A&R the right way. The insider secrets to approaching executives without burning bridges and with confidence.
Next, discover how to attract the right artist manager, when to start looking, what to expect, and how to find someone who truly believes in your vision.
And finally, unlock the world of sync licensing with how to pitch to music supervisors the right way. Get your music placed in film and TV, reach new audiences, and open up exciting revenue streams.
These guides are packed with real-world advice, practical steps, and the do's and don'ts every artist needs.
If you're listening on this podcast or watching on YouTube, just check the description below to download your free copies now. This is your blueprint for turning dreams into reality. Don't miss out.
Rich, it's that time of year again. Muse Expo 2026 is just around the corner.
Yeah, and it's the 26th year.
I can't believe that.
I know. It's absolutely, I mean,
you've been to all of them almost. I think you've been to all of them.
Every single one from the time he started it in the year 2000.
Unbelievable.
At the Bellage Hotel. That's what it was called back then on Sunset and San Vicente. Yeah, he began it 26 years ago. This is the 26th year for Music Expo. It's one of the great, it's called the United Nations of Music Conferences. And it's really an incredible event that's going to be taking place, I believe, on March 22nd.
Through the 25th.
Through the 25th.
And it's going to be at the Castaways in Burbank, which is a beautiful location for anybody that hasn't been there or seen it. It's a beautiful kind of overlook of all of the downtown Burbank.
Absolutely. And there's going to be some incredible people there. The entire music team of Netflix, all of their top music executives are going to be there.
Also Marvel.
Exactly. The music supervision team behind all of the Marvel movies is going to be there en masse, all of them together, talking about the work on the Marvel films. I mean, this is a really great opportunity. There's going to be A&R executives. We're going to be having people like Chase Butters, who's the head and vice president of Sync for Concord. We've got people like Dave Jordan, who we had mentioned earlier is the founder and CEO of Format, who does all of the Marvel films.
And we're going to be there, so that'll be a great opportunity for anybody who comes down for the event. You'll get to meet us because we'll be there taping at the shows for the podcast and for the video series. So that'll be a great opportunity. You guys out there, visit musexpo.net and register now for the event. Again, it's March 22nd through the 25th in Burbank, California. And like Rich said, it's a great opportunity and a really great event to meet people from the worldwide music industry. So visit musexpo.net.
What's going on, y'all? This is Yung Lan, Grammy-nominated, multi-platinum producer, songwriter, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is manager and partner at 1916 Enterprises, Ruchir Mohan. This was a fascinating conversation on many levels. First of all, Eric, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have had a manager who specifically manages songwriters and producers, which is a different art than artists.
I think we may have had on the... oh, no, that was producers. Never mind. No, you're correct. I don't believe we have.
It's a very, very interesting field because it's a field that really didn't exist 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
You know, songwriters were kind of on their own. They took the calls from A&R people or whoever, artists, and they managed, or they did it through their publishers.
Right.
Now you've got a lot of songwriters and producers who are specifically managed, and their career needs are different. You know, they're not known to the public.
Exactly.
But they have to be known to the industry.
Right.
And that's an important point because the knowledge that a manager of a songwriter or a producer, they have to get in with all of those artists. They have to get in with all those record companies, every one of them.
All the label heads, all of them.
Exactly. Not just one.
Right.
You know, like an A&R person.
But all of them. There's not that many out there. So, you know, there's a limited audience to that.
Exactly. And they also have to keep up with what are the artists that are available to them. One of the things that I thought was most interesting and, of course, hit us, MUBUTV, as a concept that really struck me was when Ruchir talked about, you know, using education to empower others.
Right.
This is a core principle of what we do here at MUBUTV. And I thought, you know, how he shifted his focus from making his own music to using business education to empower writers, producers, and break emerging artists. This is where I cannot emphasize how hard that struck me because, you know, we've talked about this many times on the show where I truly believe that we are in an era where that principle for artists and songwriters and producers to be educated if they're going to have a career in this business is crucial. You will not make it. Right. You will not make it unless you're educated about this. And the days of someone else doing it for you are over.
Hand-holding you.
And that's why I thought it was so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Rich. One of the other areas or one of the other points that I thought was, you know, pertinent to this conversation was about his idea of focus on artist development. Not just hit chasing. Ruchir prefers developing young talent over chasing chart success, believing in betting up on up-and-coming artists and providing resources for growth. And that's not something that you hear a lot. You know,
absolutely.
It's the lowest hanging fruit. All right, somebody's already got an established audience. This is going to be easy for me. It's like, you know, shooting fish in a barrel. He is taking the longer approach, the long, you know, tail, as they call it.
Yeah,
approach.
Faith-based,
which is what we talk about, which is not something that you see a lot, guys that are listening out there anymore. It's not a lot about faith. It's now about, you know, analytics and what you're doing and what your numbers are. And so I thought that was very unique. And I think this is a really great interview on many, many levels.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, the story that he tells and the path that his own career has had is a real inspiration, I think. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it.
And with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Ruchir Mohan.
Ruchir, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's great to be able to speak with you. We spoke to Yung Lan this morning. I want to begin our conversation with you on a professional level with regards to your particular profession. You're working with a lot of songwriters and producers who, they operate at the heart of culture, shaping sounds that literally define generations. What was it about this world that first captured your interest and most, I guess, helped shape your approach to management?
Yeah, absolutely. And great. Love that question. I got into music really, really young. I think I was 12 when I started DJing. And that was my introduction to the music world for the most part. And I began producing out of necessity because I wanted to play my own records at clubs, and I didn't really know what producing was per se. And it just opened my eyes to the fact that there are these people behind every record that aren't at the front and center of the artist and the front and center being the brand attached to it, that do all the incredible heavy lifting of bringing these records to life. And I think starting producing that young led me to appreciate the craft. As I got older, I got into school for music business at the Bandier program at Syracuse University and ended up taking time off to mentor under this songwriter and producer Explicit. I think that was the first time in my life I saw at a high level what producers and songwriters do. And I had my own manager as a producer back then too. And in that moment, I think seeing where I was as a producer and songwriter and seeing how many incredibly talented people there were, it kind of caused a flick of a switch in my head. I was like, I should really use this education that I am I'm really putting myself through and like paying good money for it, and to empower writers, producers, and do things in a better way. I think at that time I'd seen, this was around 2018, 2019. A lot of the approaches for writer producer managers were, in my opinion, not focused on emerging artists and breaking artists. And a lot of it was hit chasing. And I'm like, cool, this is elevating people that are this gifted and this talented is almost more important to me than making my own music, and also platforming and giving resources to make great music. The younger artists is something I'm always willing to bet on over and over again. And, a big part of the music I grew up on was like the indie SoundCloud scene. And I think being the conduit between great writers and producers and early artists was what really excited me and has now really carried my ethos for the last 5-6 years of my career. And like looking at someone like Lan is a great example of, he's this multi-billion streaming producer, executive, and, good friend for a long time. When I met him, none of our focus was on chasing hits. It was entirely on developing and mentoring young producers and developing and mentoring young artists. And that's like really where we clicked, and we built a business together off of that. So I'd say that's what it was, if that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
Ruchir, it's really great having you on the show. I wanted to ask you, the role of the manager has changed dramatically from gatekeeper to creative partner, strategist, and brand architect. And I'm curious, the lines between publishing management and A&R seem blurrier than ever. What does being a truly great manager mean to you now, especially in a business where trust, creativity, and strategy all intersect?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Eric. I'd say, firstly, I so agree. And I was speaking to a friend about this the other day. Now more than ever, when you're in the seat of a manager, not only are you a business partner, I feel like you're a co-pilot to for me, between artists, writers, and producers, you're a co-pilot to their business. And I think being a great manager, first and foremost, looks like acknowledging your role and advisory ability and partnership in a creative's business. And first and foremost, like working as hard as your client, wanting it for them as much as they want it for them. And I think that's the foundation for it for me. It's like, I don't try to be a manager that streamlines my life around doing less. I try to be a manager that streamlines my life around trying to be more efficient and accomplishing more. So that's one part of it. I think secondly, it just looks like having a really, really high degree of transparency, trust, and communication with your client, especially as for my artist clients, I'm acting as everything from A&R to creative partner to just business partner and like advising how to spend budgets and funds, etc. That all starts with a really high degree of transparency and communication and organization and presenting your client the information. And I'd say for the writer producer side, it's less creative co-pilot, and I try to be more of just a dot connector for them. Like my whole philosophy as a writer producer manager is more focused on maximizing their networks and not getting into the session math of things. I think great records always come from great chemistry, and that's a belief I've had since I was in the studio early in my life and career. And I would always rather get someone face to face, have them hang out. If it's a producer, meet an artist, get them together for coffee, and just like really connect every dot they can to empower themselves to make a great project. And I like working with my writer producers on a more project level and landing them multiple records and album wide work where they can really go deep with an artist. But I think, yeah, that all starts by enabling them with the right connections of the right mixer, meeting the right artists early on, meeting the right session players, meeting the right writers, the co-writers. Like if a writer producer is going to trust me to help them build their creative universe, and it doesn't require as much partnership as something as hands-on as like a video shoot or a photo shoot or like A&Ring and cohesively getting an album together for an artist, the least I can do is be creative in how I'm building their universe and network around them. And I generally try my best to stay away from session math, which is like plugging in 3 great writers and hoping for the best, if that helps out.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. Ruchir, when you are taking on a client, beyond talent, what qualities, creative, personal, or even philosophical, need to be in place before you commit to managing someone? Is it vision? Is it work ethic, chemistry, all of the above, or something that's harder to define?
Yeah, this reminds me of something my mentor, Bill Werde, who is I believe he's the director of the Bandier program, and he was the chief editor of Billboard for the longest. And he was a professor, he was a mentor. And when I was looking to decide where I wanted to go in my career, he said something to me that really has resonated with me through this day, was that he said a lot of what people chalk up to greatness is just consistency and follow through. And I'm a firm believer, and I know this is a byproduct of work ethic, but I think discipline is probably one of the biggest factors. Having been a writer producer, I know what it's like to wake up, walk over to your studio that could be literally in the same apartment, like steps away from your bed, and like trying hard to not procrastinate and just like getting yourself to work. It's like, it's being self-employed, right? I think discipline is probably the biggest variable. And for that reason, a lot of people who have either worked a day job prior or were athletes prior or just showcase high degrees of discipline in the way they operate is often correlated to the amount of volume they're able to put out for a producer that's cuts, for an artist that's records and content. So that's usually one of the first few things I look for. I'd say the second thing I look for is musical versatility. I think there's a lot of room for specialists in music. Obviously, there's session musicians, like top line writers, lyric writers. There's so many different kinds of producers, local producer specialists, whatever. But I think with the way music is trending away from the old school, oh, this is my first studio LP, and because we're able to afford and get in the studio, and it's more, oh, I made 12 tracks with some really nice dude, and we kicked it off and hit it off and just were in a creative flow in his bedroom studio, and that's where this record came out. I think that one person needs to be able to do a lot of different things and almost be a little bit of a jack of all trades, right? I think gone are the days when you can get by being a great super producer, just being a guitarist or just being a concept guy or just being a drummer. So versatility is really important to me. If I'm signing a producer, I want to make sure they know how to write. I want to make sure they're eager to get on the pen. If I'm signing a writer, I want to make sure they know how to cut vocals. I want to make sure they know how to like play at least a couple instruments. And if I'm signing an artist, I want to make sure they're as keyed up and cued in on their content creation and like building their visual identity as a brand as they are making the records. Like I see so many artists, especially in today's day and age, get into the hole of I'm just going to make an endless amount of records and never do anything to promote them because TikTok is lame or whatever it is. It's just being able to have a versatility of talent and ability and the discipline to follow through on those different pockets of things you're good at. I'd say those two things. And I mean, and last but not least, I gotta like the people I work with. I think it's awesome that a lot of the people I work with are about my age, like mid to late 20s, a couple of clients in their early 30s. And it's just really easy for us to connect and see eye to eye and have difficult conversations together. And I think above all, like I am very friendly and friends with a lot of the people I work with, and yeah, just got to be good people and easy to get along with. Because if we're chopping it up and we're having a great time, I trust your character enough to meet another stranger and chop it up and have a great time. So that first like meeting or first few meetings, if I can like really get a gauge of, okay, you're super disciplined and you're either versatile or teaching yourself to learn different skill sets, and you're just a good hang, I think that for me is the holy trinity.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. It seems to be the running theme. When we had Lan on the show earlier today, it was the same thing. It was about family. It was about getting along with the people that you're working with. And that's something that me and Rich have talked about. You get to a certain stage in life and you just don't want to deal with bullshit anymore. You want to be with good people that are going to really make things pleasant and not be an ordeal or having to deal with any drama. So it seems like that seems to be the running theme with you guys, which I absolutely love.
Because like, right, there's so many hard things that you need to deal with when you're in business together, when you not own, but like are partaking in such a significant chunk of the business with the creative. There's some tough shit you got to deal with, whether it's overblown tour budgets or like needing to recover from that, or whether it's a client works on an album for 6 months and then the album gets killed and they're not getting paid, and that's like their livelihood, and it's scrambling to make sure X, Y, or Z is possible in terms of making their rent or paying groceries or whatever. There's some real life stuff that you need to deal with together and help people navigate and dig themselves out of. And at so many points, your manager ends up being the person you talk to a lot and you turn to, and your clients as a manager end up being your friends. It's like I go for dinners with my clients and my fiance, and like it's just, you need to be able to not only tolerate each other but like and celebrate each other and have like a sincere like love for each other as partners and like people who are in a business that involves this much vulnerability and like this much navigation of, you know, the church and the business and the state in their personal life. So yeah. I think just being able to speak the same language is so important, and being able to just kick it and celebrate the good times and work through the bad is super important.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say that's going to help you when you're going through the storms and when you're going through, you know, the clear skies and everything. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Precisely.
I wanted to ask you, Ruchir, you know, today there's a lot of confusion out there about the real value of publishing. And I'm curious, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you run into with creators around this, and how do you educate them about it?
I think first and foremost, like copyright as a concept is a lot more confusing and nuanced than masters and recording at the most basic independent level, when it's not under layers of PPD or royalty. Like it's really easy for most kids in their bedroom wanting to make music and wanting to get into music to understand that, hey, there's 100% of my master, and like I mostly get it from streaming, especially in today's day and age. I think for copyright, people don't necessarily see the juice in it, especially early in their careers, and tend to neglect educating themselves about it, because so early in their careers for artists, writers, producers, it's pennies, or it's the indie artist never even registered the song, and it's not your like liability to register someone else's record as a kid in their bedroom making a record for an artist with 10, 12,000 monthly listeners, right? Like there's no desire, but it's a lot easier for people to latch onto and understand and contextualize making $1,000 off of 300,000 streams. So I think that's probably the cause. And I think the effect of that is then kids go into their career, and I've seen it a lot of times, and even like inexperienced artist managers looking at publishing as this like add-on liquidity check of like, cool, like this is another couple grand, like when they sign their first label deal or they sign their first whatever deal. And the mindset is either like highest bidder or like, what does this amount to anyway? However, I think what makes copyright so powerful is being the business. And now after a couple of economic downturns over the last 5 years, I think copyright is almost recession proof in a way that recordings are not, because if an artist's business is built off of physical, like that's really going to lose, or physical sold on tour, that's really going to lose in economic downturns. Like publishing, the business of pennies, it just keeps kind of trucking on and holding on with radio and whatever, especially once you catch a hit. And therefore, I think it's important for artists early on, writers, producers, to educate themselves on the long-term value of generating publishing assets and the long-term value of having a lot of them. Being the business of pennies, I think someone like Lan, who has largely come up in the streaming era, whether or not he was, I mean, kudos to Lan, he was very, very like aware of it through his career, but he built such a large catalog. I emphasize, especially for my clients early on, to build a large catalog and spread their bets wide, because garnering so many pieces of little publishing copyrights here and there really pays its dividends in the long run, is what I've seen. And like maintaining your ownership pays its dividends in the long run. That being said, I also think when people sign to publishers, they need to be a little more nuanced in their approach of what value they're adding, especially if they're a writer or producer. Like, yeah, in the most traditional definition and function of a publisher, you're collecting global copy, like publishing royalties. And there's so many pockets that you can get access to collecting ex-US that you will with a great publisher, with a great network like Sony or Reservoir or Empire or whatever. But beyond that, I think it's understanding and being critical of who you're signing to, what they're adding, how they're helping, how they're contributing to scaling up those 300, 400, 500 copyrights that you're going to accumulate by the time you're ready to have a family or buy your first house and you want to liquidate your assets. Like, who is going to, like I said earlier, wake up with the same conviction as you, honor the fact that they are holding on to something that is an inalienable asset that was born from your brain, and focus on scaling that business. So I'd say that's it. Another thing I feel really, really strongly about that I always try to do, like I want to shout out my client, Jack Riley, who's incredible. I've been friends with him for years. I signed him literally right as he got out of college. And one of the first things I did was we met at a coffee shop in Studio City. And I said, hey man, before we even talk about a deal or publishing or anything, like, let me sit down and explain to you your rights and your buckets and your royalties and where you're due money from, and like what signing a publishing deal entails, what portion of your money is being taken away. Because on the flip side of ignorance is also people who think publishing is this, co-publishing is this gigantic part of your business that a co-publisher is participating in. It's really, when you look at the numbers and zoom out, a portion of a portion. And I'm all that to say, I'm a firm believer of really any time, especially because I believe in working with young talent and young people. Anytime I do, or just emerging artists, not necessarily young, but anytime I do work with a new writer or a new artist, I insist on going out of my way to explain or answer any questions you have and really walk you through the whole music industry and what your rights, royalties, and buckets are and how you can leverage them later in life. And that's just something I feel really strongly about. And like, I've been fortunate enough to go to school for music business, and I've done a lot of reading and done this a long time. And I'm obviously not an attorney, but you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't have baseline knowledge of copyright. But I really insist on explaining to people like how publishing factors into their whole business, and like demystifying what your writer's share means, what a PRO stands for, like where they're collecting money from, what constitutes a mechanical and a performance royalty and this and that. Like, I just think taking the time and going out of the way to educate the people you work with is really important. And I think that only comes from a place when you've gone out of your way to educate yourself on those things as well.
Hey, insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured conversation. Stay tuned because we've got so much value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey there, insiders. Are you dreaming of making it big as a musician, artist, or industry pro? Well, at MUBUTV, we offer personalized coaching to help you turn that dream into reality.
Think of us as your personal guides, helping you polish your songs, craft your story, find your fans, and grow your social media like a pro.
No matter where you are in your journey, we've got the tools and strategies to take you higher. From live gigs to branding and marketing, our coaching is all about you.
Choose what fits your budget, from single sessions to value-packed bundles.
Start with a free 15-minute discovery call today at book.mubutv.com. Your music career is waiting. Remember why you started making music? That feeling of passion, hope, and longing, wanting someone to hear your story?
But chasing success can be confusing. Who do you reach out to? When? How do you avoid mistakes that could close doors?
At MUBUTV, we believe every artist deserves a clear path forward. That's why we've created 3 free guides that cover the essential skills every musician needs.
How to contact A&R executives with confidence. How to attract an artist manager who gets you. How to pitch your music for film and television placements.
These aren't just tips. They're blueprints designed for artists who want more than just dreams. They want results.
If you're listening right now on this podcast or watching on YouTube, look in the description below. Download these free guides that will change how you approach your music career forever.
Don't wait. Your future fans are waiting.
Hi, this is Keith Jopling. I'm the author of Body of Work. Are you an insider? I am. Subscribe now.
Yeah, we could not agree more. I mean, the whole philosophy and attitude of this channel, and we both come from the music business, is to educate people. And I'm so glad you said that, because it does require a level of, commitment. And like you said, you don't have to be an attorney, but you do have to have an understanding of the basic elements. And I always feel with publishing, one of the most important things is that it is, in a sense, it's forever, because copyright lasts, as long as you're living, plus 70 years after you die. So, it's a legacy kind of income stream too, which brings me to my next, element. I want to shift gears here with you, Ruchir, because, with so much private equity and institutional money and capital coming into music rights, as it has in the last 2 or 3 years, do you feel like the manager's job has, shifted from just being a negotiator to now having to think more long-term in terms of a financial strategist for your clients? Is that something that's real for you?
I'd say yes and no, because ultimately managers are advisors, and I can't a client wants what the client wants. It is their business, and all I can do is point them in the right direction. And
so it's bespoke. It's individual to the client.
But yeah, from a philosophical level, you need to be aware of those things, and you need to have a baseline knowledge of the rate your catalog is decaying at, the rate your assets are decaying at, knowing what the consumption patterns are for your assets or your client's assets, right? If you're not aware that you have a catalog full of country radio records where the money is going to fall off a cliff, and you're, getting a big house and whatever, and not realizing that tomorrow that money is going to radically drop off, or you have a couple of, or you could have a couple of evergreen pop records, or different genres have such distinctly different consumption patterns. Hip hop decays quickly and then resurges and then decays super sharply again. And everything has a very different curve. Some songs like folk slowly burn into evergreens and have flat lines over time. So I think it starts by being pretty acutely aware of what constitutes in your pool of publishing assets, and knowing if I hold on to this for that much longer and I'm investing the money into the market or whatever, what my yield is versus if I liquidated right now and I benefited from the time value of money and getting that capital in earlier. So as a manager, I think I go out of my way to just make sure, again, it goes back to education, being hey man, this is where your year-on-year revenue is trending towards on your publishing catalog. This is what your year-on-year writer share is looking like. This is a trend curve. This is how the consumption's decayed. Or hey dude, this song's actually a lot of your assets are really still flat and we've seen new peaks. We can hold on to it. Or hey, we had a sharp decay and we just went back up for the last 2 quarters. Now might be a good time to sell. It makes sense. You'd get a better number out of it. So I just think it starts by being really acutely aware of consumption patterns across genres, and being acutely aware of the asset mix for your clients. And I look at it almost a little bit like the stock market. Like you said, there's so much private equity in music, and different copyrights trade for different multiples and have different values on a monthly basis. And now more than ever, records are resurging. You need to be aware of what's in the pool. With Lan, he's had so many great resurgent records. I'm now might be a great time to strike. A lot of the records from 10 years ago, the trend is cycling. The kids are finding them out, right? let's really like you'll probably get a much better value and like obviously run the numbers yourself and think on it, but like we're seeing an upward tick. Like it's rough selling when your catalog is trending downwards pretty sharply. So yeah, I just always try to make sure people are aware of their consumption, know what their publishing statements are bringing in, knowing what their big performers are, what their underperformers are, what's spiked since the last quarter, and so on and so forth. And I also just like, obviously, because publishing payouts are so delayed, I try to keep somewhat of an eye as best as I can. Like it gets harder and harder as people get more like records coming out, but of the streaming patterns of a record, knowing what's in the pipeline as well. So especially for top performers for each client, I'm always aware at the general landscape of how the assets look in and how they're looking at their pool of what they own.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue to our next question for you. You know, one of your clients is the renowned songwriter producer Yung Lan, which we've been talking a lot about during this conversation. When you look at his journey from early credits, you know, with Fetty Wap to now closing a huge catalog deal, when you were putting this deal together, what was the balance that you were trying to strike between the financial upside and protecting the creative legacy that Lan has built over the years?
Absolutely. I think the way we like to operate business is we try to be in touch with. I'm always trying to meet new people, and as I should as a manager, right? I think it's important that, again, it's like publishing. You just know who you're selling to. There's faces to names. There's people you're doing business with. Obviously, you want to make sure you get a very competitive rate on your publishing, but you also want to make sure that the building you're selling your copyright to is a building that's focused on acquiring copyright that's similar to yours, that is going to see and find creative ways to put it to work and license it and extend the life of that copyright. I think in the case of Land Sale, Gold State was very bullish on a lot of hip hop assets, and they were like this new exciting. They'd had a new exciting round of funding, and they were like coming into the market hot. And it reminds me a lot of Land, where he's like young, killing it, and like turning a new chapter of his career. And they were like really referred to us in the capacity of like someone who is very aggressively building hip hop repertoire. So it's always about finding the right buyer. And I think those things are a little correlated, right? Because the person who's most cued in and wanting to invest in your genre is probably the person who also wants to extend its lifespan. Like if someone specializes in primarily country assets or pop music assets or evergreen assets, like that's just not a fit. And oftentimes they're not going to want to pay the same rate for that catalog because they don't have the vision for how they're going to utilize it. And you know, I speak to a lot of different buyers along the process, and so did Lan. And you know, someone's like, yeah, we're like really bullish on pop music royalties from the early 2000s, and then they also come back with a poor offer. Like that's not necessarily surprising. And I think in the scope of this deal, a lot of what we saw is the most passionate people were highly correlated with the highest bidders.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I mean, what you're revealing is, you know, a depth of knowledge about the cycles and the, you know, patterns that really make the financials work in this situation. So yeah, it's very interesting. You know, we had touched on this earlier, Ruchir, which was the idea of education. And, you know, we talked about its importance. You know, my question is, what lesson about, I guess, protecting and leveraging their creative work do you wish every new creative internalized early?
That's a really great, that's an incredible question. I honestly, I think something that always sticks out to me is, just because you got it today, it doesn't mean you'll have it like that tomorrow. And that's why I think it's always aware to know where your assets are, what your assets are, where they're registered, what's not registered, and trusting the person you have at the helm of the ship with you, right? Like, I think just early on, taking the 10, 20, 30 minutes, especially now with things like Chat GPT, like you can ask it to explain you like your five, what a writer share is, what a neighboring rights is. I think just taking the time and really pushing yourself to educate yourself on the different pools and buckets of royalties you have access to is so important. How to access those royalties is so important. You know, kids who get a major label cut and might not have a manager don't know how to make a Uniport account. They don't know how to set up for their master royalties. I think going out of your way to do those things and viewing the administration, again, this is if you're like, don't have a manager or partner in your business, viewing the administration and the pools of rights you have, as importantly as the music you make, I think is paramount for me, right? Like you need to know where your money is, at what course it pays out, and when it pays out, and how to get access to it. And what the latency is too. Like publishing takes forever to pay out, master royalties take forever to pay out. Like knowing those things now will prevent you in the future from being in a really bad situation, in my opinion. Like it's really unfortunate, but because of miseducation, there's artists who are, or producers, writers who are borderline homeless because they just don't know how to get into a lot of their royalty accounts, either because they never took the time, and when their fee money was coming in, they were blowing it, or a negligent manager never bothered telling them, right? Or didn't hand over their logins or tell them what to do. I think early on, you internalizing, like, just because it's here today, it won't be tomorrow, is really important, because artists, writers, producers, managers, like, a lot of times you're up when you're up and you're not when you're not. So I just think that's important. And the sooner you internalize that, the sooner you'll want to be aware of where my rights are, what my logins are, how often do I get paid out? Like, what is the cycle that I can identify that gives me some amount of normalcy in this career that sometimes getting paid feels like the Wild West. So yeah, I think that's really, it's really important to just not be short-sighted as a musician. I think knowing how advanced mechanics works, like just not being short-sighted about your finances, I think is very, very important to me. I know that's a little bit more of a broader answer, but I think a lot of times people are really up when they're up, and they think their next record is going to recoup that $1 million publishing deal, or they're getting, it's all relative, right? Or they're getting like $3,000 a song, and they're placing a couple beats, and they're like, heck yeah, let me go buy a watch or whatever. And that's not paying your rent on a month when you're not getting cuts, or your mom is sick. Like, again, real stuff happens, or you're depressed, or any number of things where you need to put life ahead of your work, which any profession has to deal with. But every other profession, for the most part, it's more orthodox, and when your next paycheck is. In music, you really, really don't. So I think internalizing that is very important, and being protective and informed of your assets and knowing how to save is super important. And the second part of that is also taking the time to educate yourself financially, like knowing that, yeah, I need to put money into the market. I need to build a nest egg. I need to, and be that asking your parents, or when you're able to get a business manager, your homies, whatever, there's always that one person in your life who like has their stuff together a little more than you do. And you're like, hey, I wonder how they do it. It's probably just because they're really wise with their money, and they know how to make, they're budgeting their money, and they're investing and whatever. Like, I think financial literacy is just as important, even if it's like a baseline level of like knowing to put some money into the S&P 500. Like, that is just as important, in my opinion. Because like, I've been there, right? Like at the start of my career, when I was producing, like, like I had some master royalties, and my manager never told me what publishing was. I don't think my music ever got registered, and I never saw my publishing income. And like, by the time I realized what was wrong with that, because I started producing music really young, and like I signed up for my SoundCloud master money. I got the DistroKid royalties. Like, I just wasn't aware of all the pockets, and I wasn't able to maximize my income. One, but two, I also didn't care to have the financial literacy to save that money. I was buying sneakers and other stupid stuff. Like, and now the older I get, I'm advising my clients to do exactly not that, because I've been there and learned the hard way. So, it takes one to know one.
Yeah.
No, it's
all absolutely great points. Yeah. Great points to share. Really quickly, Ruchir, throughout your life, have there been any books, films, or documentaries that have been particularly inspiring to you that you could share with our audience?
Oh, so many. I think what has really shaped the way I organize myself and like how I get things done is this book called The Checklist Manifesto.
Oh yeah, that's a great book. That
just really revolutionized the way I organize, like for the better. And everything I do is a checklist now. Everything. And like, even on Monday.com, I have checklists that break into deeper checklists. Like, I love a checklist.
Yep.
I'd say
you're a man after my own heart.
Yeah, right. Another book I really love is obviously Donald Passman's Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. That was like the Bible in college at Syracuse. Like that just gave me the lowdown. This is a really silly one, but Sadowik on YouTube is this dude who just does these incredible Ableton lessons, and that's what allowed me to get into music making. And I think using those YouTube like course series as a resource is so powerful, because you don't need to formally teach yourself how to produce and write music. There's really great people like Sadowik and other great YouTubers making structured content that will not only be able to give you the lowdown on how to make music, but the bare minimum on how to exploit it. And then I just think from a education and history perspective, there's this book called The Number Ones, which I literally tried to listen to every single song in it. And it chronicles number ones right down from Chubby Checkers' The Twist to BTS's Ready to Dance. I think it was Dynamite. And it talks about their cultural significance and almost like the anthropology of how music navigated to get there. And I'm a firm believer in trend cycles. And I'm like, if I don't understand how we got here, I'm not going to know where we're going. So I really found that book to be eye-opening. And as far as documentaries, The Defiant Ones is like a classic. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I remember being in college with my buddy, like, smoking weed and watching it at like 2 a.m. being like, that's going to be us someday, man. Like,
Yes.
It was so inspiring and like really made me want to work hard in freshman year. So I'd probably say those 4 resources have been really important in informing myself and how I organize myself.
Rich, that's what you use in your classes.
I do. Yeah. I show the Defiant Ones. Yeah, it's an excellent documentary that gets into so many of the areas that we're discussing. And I loved how they basically, I guess, showed the intersection of 2 different record producers, 2 very successful record producers, and how they came together. One as an artist, and then went on to have a great production career with Jimmy, and then how Jimmy went from being the great record producer with all those, classic records that he made, to being a very top executive within music, and then to go on and do things, outside of music. So yeah, it's a really brilliant documentary. Another one I can recommend to you if you haven't seen it yet is Shangri-La, which is
really? I gotta check that out.
Oh, you would love it. It's on I think it's on Showtime. It's all about creativity and producers and artists. That. It's Rick Rubin. And what his whole sort of philosophy of how you get the best creatively out of people. You don't just put people in studios and say, go. And he really talks about that process. And it's another deep dive. The way that the Defiant Ones was 4 hours. This also is 4 parts as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And something I love about Defiant Ones in particular is the way they showcase the process of A&R and the process of production, before a time when Ableton and Fruity Loops was how you made music.
Yeah.
Is I think philosophically and like spiritually the truest means of production, right? It's like almost like producing a film. You're getting the right people in the right place and hitting record.
Right.
And an A&R is like the creative conduit and facilitator. I think the honesty with which that presented those jobs to me early on was just so inspiring and eye-opening, because those are things where it's like you can get in a hole of thinking a producer means like a true producer is skinning the cow to make the leather for their kick drum. Like that's sometimes it's just about putting the right people in the right place, right? And true A&R means like, hey, put that little crash cymbal there that moves along. So like, it doesn't got to be all that. Sometimes it can, or like recut that. Sometimes it can just be like building the right chemistry for the right room, introducing the right people, and that just opened my eyes really early on and really emphasized for me, like, wanting to believe in people that are prevalent in their local communities, people that are relatively early in their careers and connecting them with each other. And just looking at A&R and production as less of a cut and dry, very specific role that you read in a textbook. Because I think that was also big for me in refocusing from wanting to make the beats and make the records myself to empowering other people. Because I'm like, wow, I can almost contribute more music to society, which I believe is my life's purpose, by empowering others and facilitating their recording process. So just seeing their approach to A&R and like they're such visionaries, and production it really laid the groundwork for how I feel about those two professions.
I couldn't agree more. Ruchir, I want to ask you, in guiding the next generation of great songwriters and producers, what is the one lesson you find yourself returning to most often, not just about crafting hits or the business, but about building a career for themselves and a creative legacy that endures?
That's a really great question. I think for writers and producers in particular, when I look at great writers and producers, I think it goes back to versatility. When I look at people like now who are really at the peak of their careers, like Julian Bunetta or Charlie Handsome or Circuit, I think what makes them so special, even Lan, honestly, like what drew me to Lan is his desire to be in hip hop and country and like R&B all at once. The point is, I think versatility and looking at your assets as a diversified pool and going out of your way to build that is really important. Like I'll have my writer producers working with everyone from folk. Like I have Jack is doing folk projects, and then he's also doing like, he's working with 24K Golden, but then he's doing a rock project, and then he's doing like this hyperpop song. Or Len, I have him he's working on the rap stuff, and then I have him in Nashville working on country, and then I'll like do an EDM pitch day. I think really not getting complacent and comfortable in a sonic pocket and willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone creatively and willing to expand your catalog outside of one genre not only allows you to build skill, but it allows you to diversify your assets. I think asymmetrically building your catalog into one genre is not only not that exciting as it pertains to your legacy when you're going to look back at your work when you're hopefully past the point of needing money to live, and the gratification you get from it. You want to look back and be like, wow, I've impacted culture in so many different pockets in so many different ways, but also, whoa, I have a really diversified portfolio. Like it's like, I look at only making one genre for your whole career, like only investing in one single stock. Like if that stock is on a downturn, you're absolutely cooked. So I'd say that's really, really important to me. I think wanting to be versatile, wanting to be diverse, and wanting to step out of your sonic comfort zone is imperative as a writer producer. I think for an artist, I really just think it's being comfortable with failure more so than writer producers, because the amount of times you're putting yourself out there and getting really vulnerable as an artist and throwing that, Instagram reel up or the TikTok or even your record, and it gets 300 likes or no streams or whatever, like it's really, really defeating. And you see some of the most like beautiful stories in artistry. It's like the Jelly Rolls of the world or the Chapel Roans, or when Gaga was told she'd never make it. Like you just got to keep on keeping on. Like you just really got to have borderline delusional belief in yourself and not stay down when you're kicked. So yeah, I'd say for producers, as you go into the thick of your career, it's important to stay versatile. And even when you're early in your career, and writers, it's really important to stay versatile, meet different people, get out of your comfort zone. And I think for artists, it's being very, very comfortable with failure and rejection, because you might get past the first stage and then get to the label and send them your album, and they're like, "Hey, this sucks. Like, can you re-record it? And we'll put a producer in with you." And it's not the producer you want. Like, you really just got to take it on the chin and keep going. And like, as do young managers. Like your baby artist might sign to a record label and be forgotten about within 3 days because they signed the next thing. Like, you got to take it on the chin, evaluate what's in your control, and keep on keeping on. So I think it's twofold.
Absolutely. Ruchir, what's the best way that people can get a hold of you in 1916? Is it through the website? Is it through socials? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably through socials. Like I literally will DM anybody back. I have found some of the most incredible musicians in my life through cold DMs and homies being like, "Hey, meet my friend." To get in touch with me, it's just DM me, like Instagram at Ruchir Music. And for 1916, honestly, DM them too. Like as working in the creative, working in the arts, you just really need to keep your ear to the ground in any facet of it, whether you're a art dealer or you're a music manager. Like we literally read every single DM of artists, producers. I read every single email just being like, "Hey, check my stuff out." I actually do. Whether I always have the time of day to hit someone back in that moment is a different story, but I literally listen to every single song that comes in my inbox and every single person that reaches out for advice. And I'll give anyone short of a serious criminal 15 minutes of my time at the very least. So I'm always happy to connect with people. But yeah, I'd say that, like, socials, the website, like we actually read the contact forms. We go through every single record. Like we huddle on the coldest of emails and be like, what do we think here? Like, I'm a firm believer of never saying no to listening to something or meeting someone.
Wonderful. Ruchir, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this. So this was really, really incredible. It was insightful, and it was very, very inspirational. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It was sincerely a pleasure speaking with you.
Wow. Now that, Eric, was a masterclass in so many areas. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, from a management point of view.
Right.
Second of all, the depth of his knowledge in the subtleties of what you need to know as a manager and as an artist, I thought was absolutely right on the money. I mean, he's so right. You know, he talked about some of the pitfalls for new artists and managers regarding publishing. And, you know, I remember he warns that both can be naive. He said some see publishing as a mere liquidity check. And the way he talked about, you know, learning how to value publishing much more than just a strategic business asset. What's so important about this is that I find among artists, songwriters, producers, and even some managers who aren't knowledgeable in this, they don't really get the value of music publishing. Right. And that is what will carry you
for the rest of your life.
Long after your career in touring and performing is over.
Right.
I mean, we've seen those deals in the last 5-6 years. People selling their legacy, you know, that's what they're selling is the copyrights. Right. And you have to understand music publishing to really get that.
Exactly.
So I thought that was a very, very valuable thing for our listeners to understand. Know your worth, know music publishing, register your songs, know what they are, you know. It's not the most sexiest or glamorous aspect of the business or showiest, but it is the one aspect that will really help carry your career.
Through the good times and through the bad times.
Correct.
That's for sure. One of the other areas, I mean, like you said, Rich, this interview is one that you go back to and listen to over and over again. One of the areas that I want to stress, and we talk about this all the time, these are one of the questions that we ask our guests all the time. You know, what qualities do you look for, like the non-creative, besides, you know, the obvious? And, you know, he said the qualities that he looks for before taking on a client, besides talent, discipline is most important, more than just work ethic. He values versatility and skills. Again, like we talk about being a jack of all trades. You know how I'm always telling you that, Rich. You got to become a jack of all trades and a master of them all in today's game.
Yes. And you're an example of that.
And thank you. And emphasizes the importance of being good to people, easy to get along with. He wants to genuinely like clients and for them to be able to build good relationships themselves. And I can't tell you who wants to deal with an asshole. I certainly don't. And I don't. I mean, I've made that like my line drawer. You know that I've talked to you about that many times. I just want to deal with good people, good, humble people that are looking to be, you know, become a success and help them in any way possible. And so that's a really important, real nugget that I would say that you guys need to instill. You cannot be a jerk in this world. It's too small of an industry, and it will come back to haunt you.
Couldn't agree with you more. Character matters.
Yes.
Character matters in this business. And like you just said so perfectly, nobody wants to deal with an asshole. Life is too short. I mean, you know, there's many, many stories going back decades. I know, you know, Alan Niven, in our conversation with him, talked about, you know, that and the craziness of them, you know, of that. So many people have addressed that particular issue when dealing with talent. And it's important because it's not a creative element. It's nothing to do with talent.
Exactly. It's just being a good person. And I think there was one area where you spoke to, and I can't remember the artist's name now, that you referred to in one of our previous episodes.
Jane's Addiction.
No, not the Jane's Addiction story, but the one that where the artist, I believe it was a female artist, I don't know if it was on Arista, that they kept them on the label longer than they probably should have because they were such a good person.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It was when I was at A&M, Rita Coolidge. They really loved her as a person.
Right.
Really, really liked her as a person. And she wasn't the biggest seller, but they really liked her. And that really made a difference. So, character matters. And, when you are talking about the element of having a career today, building relationships, always remember that. Your talent is one thing, but who you are carries you a lot further than you will ever realize.
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.